Welcome to another segment of provocative conversations destined to provoke further thought and spark greater questions regarding God, church, and the religious establishments of both the past and the present. I am the proud heretic, Mr. Provocateur himself. Even though it's you, it's really not. In relation to your so-called will. Part 4. In relation to your so-called will. Even though it's you, even though it is you that God uses, even though it is you that God sets up, and even though it is you who makes so-called choices and the so-called decisions in matters, it's really not you. We left off in part 3 in relation to this topic. We were dealing with Isaiah chapter 10 verses 5 through 15 in the New King James Version Bible, where God was saying to Assyria, "Woe to you. Woe to Assyria, woe to Assyria, the rod of my anger," because Assyria was apparently or supposedly, according to the storyline, put into the hands of God, or God put Assyria into his hands as his rod of anger against the children of Israel, his rod of correction towards the children of Israel, the 10 northern tribes of Israel. And he said, "Assyria, even though you were my rod, even though you were my staff in my hand, and even though you are the tool of my indignation toward the children of Israel, the 10 northern tribes, I will send Assyria. I will send Assyria against these people and against the people of my wrath." Now, God was sending Assyria. I know the storyline. However, it's been a couple of years since I've read the storyline or studied up on that angle of the storyline. But with God, whoever he used, whether it was Assyria, Nebuchadnezzar, meaning Babylon, or whether it was King Cyrus, the Mede-Persians, or whether it was the Greeks or whoever, there wouldn't just be one nation, supposedly. There wouldn't be just one nation that would be toppled or disciplined or corrected in God's so-called anger and indignation, as the storyline goes. But there would be surrounding nations who would be dealt with as well for different reasons. But anyway, God was saying, according to this storyline, I will send Assyria against ungodly people, against the people of my wrath. I will give him charge. I will use him to seize their possessions and take them as prey or prisoners, and to tread them down, kill others, tread down their towns, their houses, their fields, decimate their land, their property, that which they didn't take as booty. Yet, even though I'm using Syria, and Syria is the rod and staff of my indignation, it's not Assyria. Even though Assyria is going to do it, it's not them. They're not doing this on their own volition, under their own willpower. They're not picking and choosing what they do, even though they are in their own minds. But it's really not them. Because again, in relation to your so-called will, it is God who works in you to will and to do. Yet Assyria, he says, Assyria still does not. When Assyria is being used, when Adam, meaning you, meaning mankind, anyone within the kingdom of mankind, when Adam is being used, he doesn't really realize that he's being used in many situations. Judah couldn't realize that he was, I said Judah, but actually it would be the disciple who sold Judas, I said Judas, he didn't realize, apparently, because he committed suicide once he did realize, he didn't realize that he was being used by God. He didn't realize that. Most of the time we don't realize. Many times we don't realize. The average person doesn't realize that he's being or she's being used by God. Adam doesn't always understand him being used. Adam just sees what Adam is doing, and Adam thinks Adam is doing it. So even in Isaiah chapter 10, verse 7, God stated that yet Adam, Assyria, does not mean so. Assyria is not doing this because they realize that they're the rod and they're the staff in God's hand to demonstrate his anger and his indignation. They don't realize, they don't mean where God wants us to go. He wants us to go take all of their booty, all of their spoil. He wants us to bring them into captivity so that they can understand and appreciate him. That wasn't Assyria's motive. That wasn't Assyria's intentions. And it says, nor does his heart think so. Man, people don't even believe that God is using them. They think they're doing this. They think it's by their might, by their strength, by their power, by their will, by their, just like Pharaoh Pharaoh was really hardened by God. So I won't put this on Pharaoh. That's something that God has to take responsibility for, according to the storyline. What I'll say is, Pilate, the way that Pilate said to Jesus, do you not realize the type power that I have, what I could do to you or what I could do for you? And Jesus said, look, Mr. Pilate, you have no power at all over me except that which was given to you from God. So Pilate or Adam or Assyria don't always know when they're being used. They're not thinking along the lines of, I'm being used. Our current day president, he's not sitting up there in that White House saying the things that he's saying and doing the things that he's doing and thinking that he's doing the Lord a favor. Not in that sense. He's too arrogant to believe that he's doing the Lord a favor. He might intellectually say it. He might say it for a political gain, in order to gain more of the crooked right of Christianity, the crooked right of Christianity. That's what I call them, the crooked right of Christianity. And that's basically what these people are. They are the crooked rights. You're not right, but in a crooked sense, you are right. So I call them the crooked right. Some of it, you need to just call it what it is. It's the coon rights. They're just coons. They're religious coons, the coon rights. But anyway, I don't have anything. I have more against Christianity than I necessarily do against the president. The president is just being a fool. He's being a puppet, but he's playing his role perfectly. God is using him to play that role. I don't deny that one bit. It's just that just because God uses you doesn't mean anything. I'll say it like this. Hold your heads. Just because God uses you doesn't mean a damn thing. In fact, that's probably what it means. A damn thing. Why? Because you're probably going to be damned in the process. Yeah, ask Pharaoh. Look at Judas. Look at Saul. You see how that goes? You got to go and read 1st and 2nd Kings and 1st and 2nd Chronicles and see what happened in those situations as well. People are put up as puppets. You're just a mere puppet. You're just playing your role. You don't have role. Most people in a play, in a movie, very few people have that starring role where they're there from the beginning to the end. Some people, they just pop up in segments. Some people just pop up for one small scene. They're in the play. They're in the skit or the story, but they just have a small skit within the story. What's going on in the White House? This is temporal, people. This is temporal. Truth must prevail. Go back and listen to that message. Truth must prevail. I recorded it on the night that the impeachment was brought to an end. When the final votes to impeach him, or not so much to impeach him, but to find him guilty of any of those charges. I recorded it on that night. Again, I say to you, I don't have a vendetta against the president, but I definitely have a righteous issue against his people who are fueling him. I have a righteous issue against his arrogance and his pride, because the universe itself has a vendetta against pride. You need to go back and read your book of Proverbs. I don't know how the Christian world has veered away from the book of Proverbs as it relates to all the verses in it when it deals with pride and haughtiness and arrogance. Yet we push it, we preach it in church, but we don't apply it to anything. And somehow we give this person in office all of this undue space to be just as prideful and as arrogant, making King Nebuchadnezzar look weak in comparison. And yet we don't compare him to King Nebuchadnezzar. We want to compare him to a person who we know little of anything about from the Bible side of things, other than the fact that he was King Cyrus, the king of Persia, or the Medes and Persians at the time, and he was in office at the time that Nehemiah and those were under his control or under his rule, and they wanted to do something for the kingdom, or they wanted to rebuild a certain part or whatever. So because he granted Nehemiah what they wanted or what they requested, now we label him as this awesome Prince of Peace, this awesome man of God, because he did something. But people, don't you realize, I read, it's not in the king's hand to direct as he pleases, and that the king does not pick and choose what he does, but rather God does it. I read another verse that says, it is not a man to walk and direct himself. And I read in another verse in Proverbs 29 and 26 where it says, justice only comes from the Lord. So God is telling you where the justice comes from. Yet we seek justice. The Republicans seek justice from the man in office, not the one above, but the man in office. Justice, rightness only comes from the Lord. And remember, God, not man, not the president, not your boss, not whoever is in over you, not the local police department, local sheriff's department, not the governor, not the state trooper, but God. He's the one who sways man's mind and steers it like the rivers of water. He steers it in whatever way he chooses. So these people, whether it's the president, whether it's whoever, they can make whatever plans they want, but only the plans of the Lord will prevail. And we need to understand that and begin to operate under that notion that these people, even though they're in position, we do not have to lick their boots. We do not have to kiss their boonies. We don't have to do that. God is in control, not them. So even though you are doing it, even though you are in the position that you're in, you're still not in control. The Bible says, we read it yesterday, man cannot even figure out his own way. Man doesn't even understand why he makes the decisions that he makes and does the things that he do. Man doesn't understand that. So how do we put ourselves and believe that if we could only please man, it will all be okay? Man may sit in that position, Pilate, but man, Adam, Pilate, you have no authority at all except that which was given to you. And most of the time, what people think is in their authority or under their authority, that is under their charge at will, like Pilate thought with Jesus, most of that stuff isn't even under their power, their will, their ability to sway either left or right. That's not for us who are under these people to feel that now we can disrespect them or we can quote scripture to them or whatever. There may be times where we may have to do that. Adam may have to quote scriptures or verses to Adam. But Adam needs to understand that humility is first and foremost. If you look at Jesus, he wasn't necessarily quoting much at all to Pilate. His mouth was shut, but Pilate wanted him to answer him. So Jesus answered him with a verse, and he just said, "Sir, Mr. Pilate, I just want you to know that you can't touch me any more than what God has enabled you to touch me." God doesn't allow people to do anything like Satan was allowed to attack Job. God doesn't allow. God creates and causes. He enables. Your God enables. No, he doesn't. Your God enables. That's a lie. Your God enables. Trust it all. He enabled Pharaoh to have a hardened heart. He enabled Jacob to trick Esau. He enabled Joseph's brothers to put him where he was. He enabled Judas to do what he did or to sell Jesus out. He enabled those things. He enabled them. Jesus enabled the people to finally arrest him. Why? Because he went back into the town that he knew they all already wanted him. It was all set up. It was all role play, people. I know that we don't want to see God as being a God of role play, of God of puppeteering, but we can say whatever we want. That doesn't change anything. So don't buy the hype of the cryptic. Out here in the world, pretty much it seemed like it started in California. I'm not sure. But you have two groups, the Crips and the Bloods. Now, of course, that has spread all around throughout now the different states. But you have the Crips and the Bloods. Well, whether you realize it or not, we have spiritual mafias. We have a whole spiritual mafia kingdom in the Christian world, in the so-called unchristed world. I don't call them Christians. I call them the unchristed. The unchristed. So we have the unchristed world, the unchristed underworld of the Christians. They feel they're the overworlds. They're over the whole world. The unchristed Christians. And within the kingdom of the unchristed Christians, you have the spiritual mafia. You have them all, and they're in their rankings, their file and rankings. And then outside of the mafia, you still have the street thugs of Christianity. I call them the cryptid rights, the cryptid rights, the cryptid rights. So what we're seeing now are the cryptid rights who are empowering those in office to feel the certain way that they do, and that they have all of this undue, unassigned power, just like Assyria felt that they had this assigned power. But God was saying in Isaiah 10, I'm the one using you as my rod and my staff. I'm the one using you to correct some things. I'm using you to expose some things. I've been saying for 4 years, God is using this president in this current White House to expose all of the underhandedness, all of the trickery, all of the lies and deceit of the cryptid rights of the non-spiritual, unchristian mafia. God is using all of this and all of this president, this current president, and all of the Republican Party to unveil all of the true essence of the party, of politics, of individuals, of groups, Christian groups, the cryptic groups. God is using this guy to expose all that ails not just the United Divided States of America, one nation over God, no nation under God, one nation over God, because they feel that they are God. And God is exposing different countries. He's showing other countries our back parts, the hinder parts of the United States, and he's showing them that we are not this Assyrian, Babylonian type ruler who just go around and just step on everything and everybody. Even in this story here, it says he was stepping on the people. He said, I put down the inhabitants like a valiant man. My hand has found like a nest the riches of the people, and I've gathered all the earth, and there's no one who moved his wing, nor opened his mouth even a peep, because I'm the big dog. It said he trampled over them. He stepped over them. He stepped on them. And no one could or can do anything. And that's the mindset that people in office have, that our current sitting president has. And it talks about it in Isaiah, his haughty looks, the fruit of his arrogance. And he says, by the strength of my hand, I did this, and it's by my wisdom, because I'm the wisest one, and I'm smart, and I have removed the boundaries of the people. I robbed their treasuries. I've dismantled Medicaid. I've dismantled food stamps. I've dismantled public assistance. I'm dismantling even housing, because I'm going to put these people out there on these jobs for my buddy CEOs, and my buddy CEOs won't have to worry about paying too much on them, too much taxes on them. My buddies will not. I will make sure that my buddies are empowered where they don't have to hire these people full time. They don't have to worry about covering them under health insurance or anything else. They won't have to worry about being penalized. And we'll give the little peasants, we'll give the little peons underneath us a few tax breaks that will turn around and switch that up and make that turn to our favor, not theirs. But we know that they're ignorant, they're dumb, they're just peasants, they're just no one, and we'll make them feel as though they've received something from us, when in actuality we're fattening our pockets. And then we'll make it where all of those CEOs and all of those, my buddies, my cronies, my coons, will see that they get whatever it is that they're needing or desiring, not needing, but desiring as well, which is greater wealth, greater position on the Forbes list, greater stocks and greater bonds and greater whatever when it comes to the stock market. It's all fixed, people. And it's only because Assyria, Adam, thinks that he's doing a thing, when in actuality, God is rocking and shaking and doing a thing. So we have to try our best to not get caught up in relation to man's or Adam's so-called will, not even your own will, Adam. We're all Adams, male, female, boy, girl. It doesn't matter. We're all Adams. We're just smaller Adams. We're just offsprings of Adam. So again, when I speak of Adam, I'm speaking of the whole spectrum of humanity, across the whole spectrum. But anyway, just like God said to Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar as well, but Assyria. Assyria thinks that Assyria is doing this. Assyria thinks that it's by their might and by their strength that they're doing the things that they're doing. But what Assyria doesn't realize is that they're not doing this here. I'm doing this here. But Assyria doesn't think so. That isn't in Assyria's heart. Most of the times, oftentimes when God is using us, we don't even realize he's using us, and we think it's us. So we get the big head and we don't even realize it's God doing this, not you, nut. It has nothing to do with your will. It has nothing to do with what you're doing and what you're capable of doing. It has everything to do with what God has done. Because remember, we read it yesterday in Proverbs. Man can ponder a thought, but every decision and the steps of that man are ordered by God. So if the steps that you're trying to take are not of God, or not in his plan and purpose already beforehand, then what you're thinking and what you're conjuring will not be able to be walked out by you, because God controls the steps or the decisions, the ultimate decision that you make. So we ended off saying, God saying that should the axe boast against the person who's using the axe to chop down the tree? The axe has no boasting rights in this. The axe is just being used. used. The president is just being used. Or shall the axe or shall the saw exalt itself against him who saws it? That's what has happened. The cryptid rights are giving the president this mindset that you can boast about what you're doing. Look at what I've done for the economy. No president has done anything remotely close to what I've done. Look how great I am. That's exactly what Assyria was doing, people. And those of you who you support the president and you so-called pray for the president as though your prayers are doing something like that. Your prayers are doing something. For those of you who support him, I don't tell you not to support him. Support who you feel you must. What I say to you is, in the process, just don't ignore these verses, because you are going to have to show some type of accountability for your support of Assyria's mindset, because most of you, whether you're the alt-right or the cryptid right or the spiritual assassins, the so-called, or should I call you the unspiritual assassins, the unspiritual mafia of Christianity or non-Christianity, non-Christ-anity. You're some type of anity, but it's more insanity than it is Christ-anity. So you need to understand that the saw cannot exalt itself against the one who's using it to cut down whatever he's cutting down, to dismantle or even to erect whatever is being dismantled and erected. And if God is using you, you don't have to tear down everyone else in order to get to the top, or in order to get into the polls, in order to get the vote of the people. If God is using you, you can rest assured that if he's using you and he means for you to be the winner, you can do it without chopping down everything that is in the way, along the way. God is the one who's causing your saw, your cutting abilities to be utilized. God is using it for his good. But of course, Assyria or Adam doesn't know this. Adam needs to realize in relation to his so-called will that even though it's you, Adam, it's really not. Then we go over now today into Hebrews chapter 3. Hebrews chapter 3. And I want to say verse, I tell you what, let's go to verse 4. Hebrews chapter 3, verse 4. And I want to do it in the New King James Version for right now. It says, just listen to the terminology. For every house is built by someone. Do you realize that? Every house is built by someone. It's not your will, Adam. Every house is built by someone. We read yesterday in the book of Psalms, it says, for it is God, it is the Lord who builds the house. And except God builds the house, your labor is in vain. For every house is built by someone, but he who built all things is God. See how it's not your will, Adam? Do you see that, Adam? It's not your will, Adam. It doesn't matter if you in the highest office of our nation. Adam, is not your will. It's not by your might. It's not by your strength, not by your power, not by your smarts, not by your wits. Remember, God says he takes the foolish things of this world to confound the wise. Adam, your position is foolish in relation to God's wisdom. Your position is foolish, Adam. You don't have as much power as you think. For whatever reason, God is going the route that you think you're going. In fact, God is taking you the route that you think you're taking yourself, and that your cronies are taking you, and that the cryptid right is steering you, where the unchristian, the unspiritual assassins, the unspiritual mafia are encouraging you to go. It's sad. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that a lot of these people that I know and that I followed for several years prior to them coming into the White House's regime. But anyway, again, as a so-called Christian, which I don't call these people Christians, or if I do call them Christians, I call them that just to refer, just as a reference, and so that people can understand what I'm saying. But underneath all of that, I don't call them Christians. I had a discussion with one of my family members recently, maybe 3 months ago, 2 months ago. And I told that person, that female, I said to her, instead of us always trying to defend Christianity, because we'll say, well, they're not Christians. Well, they're not true Christians. I said, look, since Jesus never labeled us as a Christian, why do we even defend that title? Don't even defend the term. Give them the term. Give them that title. Now we can say they are Christians, but I'm not a part of that. That's why I say to hell with Christianity, to hell with the church, to hell with religion, to hell with all of that stuff that trumps out and nullifies the power of God from ever taking effect into the lives of the followers. To hell with that. Yes, God has used that in many ways. He has used that stuff, but he uses everything. God used doo-doo. Sure, a lot of places are fueled by doo-doo. Doo-doo, yes. So it's not like God can't use what he uses. He uses it all. But that doesn't mean that it will continue to be what it is. So I say to hell with religion, Christianity. But anyway, Hebrews 3:4, every house is built by someone, but he who built all things is God. You did not build this present economy, Mr. President. You did not build what you're doing when it comes to medical needs, the medical needs of the people, whether you call it Obamacare or whoever's care. And for those of you who think that, oh, he's just an Obama supporter. No, I liked the guy from a distance, not having ever studied him or anything or truly followed him. I liked him for the things that he stood for, including people. He showed more inclusionary traits of Christ or God than what we have presently. So no, did I vote for him? No, I voted for no one in either of the 8 years that he was in office. So it's not that, people. And no, I don't have a felony on my record. Okay. So it's not like I can't vote. So don't think that either. I support truth in whatever manner truth comes. And if you are a truth Christian, then you should be a supporter of truth. It's not about a party. It's not about a certain affiliation. It's not about a denomination. It's not about your oral traditions. It's not about the fact that your state is Democrat or your state is Republican or your state is whatever. It's not about any of that. It's all about the right and wrong and fairness of a matter, because the Bible says that all the law hinges upon this one: love. Love your neighbor as yourself. Everything is summed up in love. And if you're not supporting truth, if you're not supporting love, if you're not supporting the people, you are wrong. If being a spiritual hitman or hitwoman for the underworld of unchristians, for the underworld of the over God we trust, then I'm disappointed in you, especially if you hold position. Now, if you're not claiming anything, and even if you hold position, I can understand, okay, you're not there yet. Mentally, you're not there. Intellectually, spiritually, you don't understand things. But for those who claim, and yet you do and support, there's an issue there. And it has nothing to do with politics. I'm talking about the truth of the matter. So every house is built by someone, and he who built all things is God. And that's what people need to understand. It is God who has built all things. God put this president in office. Yes, he did. He put him in office, but not for the reasons that people believe. Adam believes that God put Adam in office because Adam is so great and Adam is the best choice. Adam is not the best choice. Adam is the only choice. God does not choose us. He told Israel, I didn't choose you because you were the greatest nation, because you were so nice and your women were so fine and your men were so handsome and strong and your children were such heavenly angelic potentials. No. I chose you even though you were a hellraiser. God said, I want to say it, I forgot the book that it was in. I almost say Jeremiah, or Isaiah. It could be wrong, but God said, and we went over it in one of the recordings. God said, I knew you were obstinate before you were ever even born. From your birth, I knew you were going to be an austere person. I knew you were going to be ugly. You were going to be prideful. You were going to be haughty. But I also understood why I chose you. I chose you, Pharaoh, for this very reason. I chose you, Moses, for this very reason. I knew, Moses, you were going to try to deliver your brother and kill him, but I chose you for this very reason, to deliver my people. I knew, you brothers, if I gave Joseph a dream and he gave it to you all, you would get jealous of him. I knew that if I put love in Jacob's heart towards Jacob, Jacob would favor his son Joseph, and that you brothers, you 11 brothers, you would get upset and angry and want to kill Joseph. I set it all up that way, fellas. I knew that if I put Joseph into the Pharaoh's house, that Pharaoh's wife would come after Joseph. She would see something sweet in him and she would want a piece of that pie, or she wanted to share a piece of her pie. I knew she was going to do that, Joseph, and yet I put you in that house, Joseph. Joseph, I knew if I brought her or had her or swayed her to come on to you, that you would end up in prison. I knew that. Yet I put you there because I also knew that the butler and the baker were going to be in that prison cell, and they would hear of a dream that you interpreted, and they would remember you and recall that to the Pharaoh at the appointed time, and that the Pharaoh would eventually deliver you out of that and then end up putting you in position, because I knew that your father and your brothers would have to come through Egypt in order to move along the timeline that I had for their lives as well. And I knew that if I put starvation in the land, that your brothers and your father would have to eventually migrate to you. And then I could save all of you all and position all of you all for what I was going to raise this Pharaoh 400 and something years later for, to release you all. But first I would have to harden his heart, because he wouldn't do it unless I hardened his heart. His heart had to be hard, and I had to do that. So it's all just set up, and we can walk all the way all the way to Christ, all the way to Paul, all the way to the New Testament. We can see those patterns play out. But yet we think it's us. We have the Christian community. You know what I call them, but we'll call them the Christian community. We have the Christian community supporting what this president is doing and making him feel emboldened. But I said from the beginning, God is just using all of this to expose and then to dismantle. I say, remember, I said it. I, the proud heretic, Mr. Provocateur himself. Remember, I said it, and I've been saying it since 2016, 2015, nearing the end, but 2016. God, well, actually, I've been saying it before the president and all of this here. I'll say I began saying it somewhere in 2007, 2008, 2009. Listen to me. God is dismantling church. God is dismantling this so-called clique this so-called underground mafia world, this roguish grouping of people who are under this so-called Christ umbrella. God is dismantling it. Preacher, I speak to you. Everybody wants to hear a prophet. Everybody wants to seek out a prophet. Here we go. I had a close brother, not physical brother. I had a close brother who I thought very highly of. I have not seen him for maybe 5 years now because of what I said, which will be exactly what I'm getting ready to tell you. This brother could not accept. This brother asked me a question. He's a genuine brother. He asked me a question. He stated, and I know that he couldn't necessarily take the full condition of where I live. And I want to speak on that just for a quick second. You need to learn how to appreciate wherever people are along the plane of their destiny, along the timeline of their destiny. God will cause certain people to suffer and to struggle in order to teach you a lesson of gratitude and in order to teach you how to love people no matter where they are. You won't be like the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Lord, I thank you that I'm not like this man because I do this and I do that. I own this and I own that. And you won't be looking down your nose at everyone. But anyway, this brother could not appreciate where I was in my timeline physically, as far as my living and all. Oftentimes people will think that people should have by now been this far ahead or own this or own that. Let me just take this side note. If you define yourself by your possessions, you are a poor, wretched individual. Do you know how? You need to read the book of Ecclesiastes. It'll show you how fruitless and how it could. Ecclesiastes, it uses a word continuously, but right now I can't think of that word. But vanity, it's vain, it's vanity for you to get caught up on your possessions, to think that your possessions are what clarifies you or establishes you. Your possessions do not establish you. You're not established by your possessions. If you're defined by your possessions, you have a small definition of yourself. God is greater than you and your possessions. There's a verse in the Bible that does say that our kingdom is not of this world. In the Bible, there's another verse in the Bible that says, don't store up your treasures here on earth. All of this is temporal. So people kind of assume or hope or believe that a person such as myself should have been this far or that far by now, but you don't even understand the course that a person's life takes. You don't even understand the course that your life takes. It said it in the book of Proverbs yesterday. No man understands his own course. I don't understand why Jesus couldn't live beyond 30 years old. And don't get spiritual now. I don't understand why Kobe Bryant's daughter had to leave at 13 years old. I don't understand how Kobe Bryant had everything and yet he ended up not even being able to enjoy those things. I don't understand how Kobe Bryant made it to the state to the position, to the height that he made it and became so wealthy and had such a promising future. Yet in his 40s, I think, he's gone. Then you wonder, well, is that tied in to the fact that, well, he apparently didn't support his parents the way that you would have thought he would have for whatever reason he had. Yet now all of that money didn't profit him because it's left for someone else to squander or enjoy or struggle with. Read the book of Ecclesiastes. It talks about that. It's all vanity. We all die the same. And then it's left to someone else who isn't nearly as wise as us. And then they just exploit it. So what was it all for? But anyway, stop defining yourself and stop defining other people based upon where they are financially, or whether or not they own a house, whether or not they own land. That is so trivial. That is so carnal minded. And it's unfortunate that we base everything about people, everything about Adam, based upon what Adam possesses, what Adam owns. And that's how people have judged me. Well, you're just wrong, and you're just showing who you are. You're a carnal individual. You're really carnal. But anyway, let me go back to what I was saying. Let me pick that thought back up as I go. I'll get it in just a minute. Every house is built. I forgot that thought, but it'll come back if it's important. For every house, Hebrews 3:4, is built by someone, but he who built all things is God. Isaiah chapter 26, verse 12, New King James Version, Isaiah 26:12. It says, Lord, you will establish peace for us. God will establish it. You have also done all our works in us. We need to understand that it was God who did all the works in us. There's a verse in the New Testament that says, for it is God who works in you to do and to will of his good pleasure, to do and to be and to will of his good pleasure. It is not in you. It is not by your might. It is not by your so-called will that it happens. God has done all our works in us. In the New Living Translation of Isaiah 26:12, it says it like this: Lord, you will grant us peace, for all we have accomplished is really from you. All of your accomplishments, sir, Mr. President, all of your accomplishments, sir, Senate, all of your accomplishments, sir, ma'am, all of your accomplishments, Adam, really came from God. So even though it's you, it's really not you in relation to your so-called will. In Philippians 4:13, and in Philippians 4:13 in the New King James Version of the Bible, it says, I, Adam, can do all things. But the only reason that Adam can do all things, and there's a limitation there. You can't change your race. You can't change who your mother or your father is. So it's not saying it in that sense. I can do all things through Christ. The only reason you can do the things that you do, all we have is accomplished because of you. All you are able to do, boss, Mr. Sir, Mr. Supervisor, Miss Supervisor, Sergeant so-and-so, Staff Sergeant, Sergeant First Class, First Sergeant, Sergeant Major, Command Sergeant Major, Lieutenant, Major, Lieutenant Colonel, Captain, General, Full Bird. Sir, ma'am, it's all because of him through Christ. Now in Philippians 4:13 in the Message Bible, and you will hear me say stuff in regards to the military. Why? Because at this current time of my recording, I have 5 kids in the military, and then I was in the military. My wife was in the military. We were both in the military. All of us, all of my kids except one are in the Army. Or all of my 5 kids who were in the military, all except one are in the Army, and one is in the Air Force. And then my wife and I both served time in the Army. So I have to speak to that audience of people, because if you understand anything about military structure and military rank and authority, man, a person's now, when my wife and I were in, the rank was worn on people's collar. Now they wear it it's hinged upon the chest plate of their uniform for the most part. Maybe in the Class A's it's a little different. But anyway, when I was in, people's attitude, even the spouse's attitude, was really based upon the weight of their husband's collar, or based upon the weight of the person's collar who was the active duty member. So people would wear their attitude based upon their rank, based upon the weight of their collar. So I have to speak to these E5s and E6s and E7s and E8s and E9s and all of these officers. I've never really had a whole lot of dealing with those in the a warrant officer. They've never shown me any part of them that showed arrogance, but I'm sure that there are those who have it. But I like to address that because oftentimes people in the military, they get the big head about their positions and their rankings, and they talk down to other people. Even if you have a specialist, an E4 under a sergeant, he'll dog out the few people that he has under him. He can't write them up necessarily. He can't give them an Article 15 or whatever. But that little authority goes to his head, and he wants to be a chump to the very ones that he's amongst. But it just shows how people in position they abuse their position. So I have to include the military when I talk about all of these things. Philippians 4:13, it says in the Message Bible, whatever I have, wherever I am, I can make it through anything in the one who makes me who I am. Do you know it is only because of God who makes you who you are that you're able to do whatever you do, and that you're able to have whatever you have, and that you're able to be prosperous in wherever you are? Wherever you find yourself? Stop thinking that it's you. Stop thinking that it's you, Mr. White House. What you have is not because necessarily the sweat and blood and tears of you or your forefathers or your father or whoever. Whatever you have, wherever you are, regardless of what you drive, regardless of what you don't drive, regardless of where you live, regardless of where you do not live, regardless of what you possess in the form of a house, in regards to what you do not possess in the form of a house in comparison to. Whether you're buying or whether you're renting or whether you're leasing, whatever, it's only because of the one who makes you who you are, and to be whatever you are, and to reside wherever you do. And those of you who feel that your might or your strength has gotten you to a certain level and to a certain point, and now you can look down at others and you judge Adam's worth based upon Adam's net worth in possessions, you're wrong. You are not walking in accordance with how God sees a thing. And you're going to misjudge, and you're going to miss out on people such as myself who do not match up to where you think that a person should be in God when it comes to possessions. 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 12. 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 12. I'm going to read it in the New King James Version, and then I'm going to go into the New Living Translation, and then I'm going to go into the Message Bible. Now, in this, it says in the King James Version, 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 12, it says, furthermore, when I came to Troas to preach Christ's gospel, and a door was opened to me by who? God. Do you see that? A door was opened to me by God. Okay? You didn't open the doors that were open to you into the White House. You didn't open the doors that were open to you in Congress, in the Senate, as a governor, as a lieutenant governor, as a vice president of the United States, as an executive. as a CEO, as an owner. You didn't open those doors, sir, ma'am. So in relation to your so-called will, your so-called ability, your so-called choosing, your so-called brains, you didn't open up the capabilities in your mental faculties, the academic abilities that you possess in your abilities as it relates to higher education, academia, going to college and getting that bachelor, that master's, that doctorates. Sir, ma'am, that's not about you, sir or ma'am. You can bump your head today and be through with all of that tomorrow, or rather tonight. Sir, ma'am, it's not your money that got you where you are. It's not your success, sir or ma'am. It was opened to you by God. In the New Living Translation, it says it like this. Well, when I came to the city of Troas to preach the good news, see, that's what the gospel is about, people. It's about the good news of Christ, not the good news of your denomination, not the good news of your hell, of your destruction, of your claiming that God is angry with man and God is going to send all of these people to hell. Your bad news about homosexuality and lesbianism. It says, the Lord gave me tremendous opportunities. The opportunities that you possess, that you and I possess, that Adam possesses, is because of God. God enabled, empowered us for these opportunities. It is God, not you, not your schooling, not your abilities, not your clout. And in the Message Bible, it says it like this. When I arrived in Troas to proclaim the message of the Messiah, I found the place wide open. Wonder who opens all of these wide open positions. Let's see. God had opened the door. All I had to do was walk through it. Do you realize, sir, ma'am, all you're doing is walking through the door that God enabled for you, that he opened for you? You're just walking through the door, sir, ma'am. Mr. President, you just walked through the door that God had already opened. That's why you had no prior education. That's why it wasn't required of you to have served as a military person before you became the commander-in-chief of the entire supposedly strongest military on this planet. That's why, sir, you were able to become a president and be over not so much over the Constitution, but have so much influence in regards and power in regards to the Constitution, or as a result of the Constitution, and you didn't even have to understand or even know the Constitution. That's why you became not even the 50th president. You're beneath 50 people in this United States history, or this divided states history, who has obtained a position, and you had no prior knowledge of those presidents who were before you. That's why you have to give it to God, sir, because you didn't have the ability to do this here. That's why you could campaign on nothing and campaign on the back and on top of lies and deceit and yet win, sir, because God opened that door, not you. All you had to do was walk through it. Why the Christian community, or the unchristian, the unchristed community, the cryptic ones of unchristianity couldn't tell you that, doesn't tell you that, don't tell you that? I don't understand, sir. I don't hate you, man. I don't even know you. I think you're prideful. I think you're arrogant. And I think you should be ashamed of yourself at 70 years old, because there's no way that I would allow, if I had anything to say in it, my grandmother to get up there in the front of the world at 70 years old when she should be at the stage of correcting things and preparing herself to go to the next cycle in life. And she's up in front of people acting more of a fool than I am. I think that's disgraceful. But who am I? God sees it as how he sees it. I'm speaking from my humanity. And I would, if I had anything to say, and I would tell my grandmother, Grandma, sit down, please, for us, for your own sake, Grandma. It's bad when you're an old fool. I don't want you to look like a fool, Grandma. Please. But anyway, God doesn't see it that way at this point in time. God needs you, Mr. President, to do what you're doing. Adam is not in trouble with God for what Adam is doing. God is utilizing Adam, but one day Adam will come into the reality of the fact that Adam was just being used, right? Nebuchadnezzar, did you not come to the conclusion that now I know that God rules in the kingdom of man? So anyway, God opened whatever door is open and available to you, sir, ma'am. It is not you. It is God. There's a verse, and we'll probably hit it. We'll have at least one more recording of this. For it is God who works in you to will and to do of his good pleasure. It has nothing to do with you, sir or ma'am. Wow. Let's go to the next one.